how I gotta ask you, Russell to the Lakers. How are you feeling? Not how does this look in the league? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling okay. From a couple
Damn
hours
it,
ago,
Kyle.
let me finish. From a couple hours ago, I was livid. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to believe it. I even texted Kevin. It was like, yo, flying out to LA. We're gonna unnear this deal because Adrian Wojnarowski was saying that they're close to nearing a deal for Russell Westbrook to the Lakers. I told Kevin, like, nope, not on my watch. Not gonna happen. But I've had some time to reflect on the news, kind of just take the information at what it is. And I look at it this way. I'll start with the pros first. The pros is that I believe that Russell Westbrook upgrades the point guard position from where the Lakers were last year. They had Dennis Schroeder at the point guard position last year. And to say that he was a disappointment is a pretty accurate statement. I thought during the regular season he was okay, but I thought in the playoffs he was atrocious. He didn't really get anything going for the Lakers offensively, and he was kind of a liability defensively on the defensive side of the ball for the Lakers. So when I look at Russell Westbrook, he's a very known quantity. You know what you're going to get from Russ. The guy is a triple double machine, and I'm going to put money on this that pick and roll that they're going to run with Russell Westbrook and Anthony Davis. I think it's going to be a money connection, and I think the Lakers are going to really make sure that they rely on that connection being smooth throughout the entirety of the season. So Russell is a solid point guard. He is still producing at a tremendous clip. He was really one of the reasons that Washington really made a late season push to get into the playoffs this past season alongside Bradley Beal. So if he could continue that type of production from what he had the last 2 to 3 months in Washington, I know he didn't necessarily perform as well in the playoffs, but if he could continue what he did at the end of the regular season going with the Lakers, I think it could bode well for the Lakers. And I just think you're getting a very solid veteran presence on the team. And look, Russ is one of the most electric, one of the most dynamic point guards that we've ever seen in NBA history. So I think there's a possibility of Russell paying some huge dividends for the Lakers. Now let's transition to the cons of this trade. The fact of the matter is that you're giving up a lot in this trade. You're giving up Montrezl Harrell, KCP, Kyle Kuzma, and some draft picks. And it does leave the question, where's the depth on this team after this trade? You've got LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Russell Westbrook. They are probably going to eat up at least 80 to 85% of the salary cap for the Lakers. And the way that I currently see this roster, they don't have a lot of depth outside of those three guys. They've got like Markieff Morris, they've got Ben McLemore, they have Wesley Matthews. Now, we don't know whether or not that Andre Drummond's going to return. I highly doubt that. But when you look past those top three guys in Anthony Davis, Russell Westbrook, and LeBron James, they don't have a lot to work with. So unless they can get some veteran minimum contracts to add to bolster the back end of the roster, I kind of see this trade working out very similar to what Brooklyn did with James Harden. James Harden was that third piece to add to the roster for Brooklyn, but they had to basically give up most of, if not all of their depth from the bench to make that happen. So it is a little bit troubling to me in that sense. And not only that, Russell Westbrook has a very high chance of turning the ball over in every single game that he plays. He had almost 5 turnovers a game last year with the Washington Wizards. That is not going to work. They're going to have to somehow limit him to turning the ball over that frequently. So I kind of hope that they're going to be able to work out these issues going into next season. But I like the trade simply just because it is an upgrade from Dennis Schroeder. But the fact of the matter is that there's some cons associated with it. The fact of the matter is that those three guys that I just mentioned are going to be eating up a lot of the cap for the Lakers. They are injury prone, all three of them. And I don't know how they're going to mesh. I don't know how the chemistry is going to work out because Russell Westbrook's a ball dominant player. LeBron James is a ball dominant player. They're going to have to figure out how it's going to work with who's going to bring the ball up for the Lakers. And those are going to be the burning questions for the Lakers in the offseason before the season starts.
Dude, all I know is I have the contracts pulled up here. This season, he's due $44 million in terms of Russell Westbrook. Next upcoming season, 2022, Russell is due $47 million. From an article that I read earlier this evening, the Lakers are already at $130 million in the cap. That is absolutely ridiculous because the majority of the players that they have signed to their rosters in terms of like bulk size contracts are the three players that Kyle just named in terms of Anthony Davis, LeBron James, and Russell Westbrook now. Absolutely insane. Like Kyle said, the depth, it's going to be ridiculous. They're going to be running a really tight ship. The only players they're eligible for re-signing and without really breaking the cap, if those players choose to re-sign in LA, are going to be Alex Caruso and Taylor Horton-Tucker, because those are really the only players you don't really have to break your bank. I mean, Caruso played good this year, nothing crazy. You don't have to go and pay him double digits. Obviously, Taylor Horton-Tucker is looking for his first official NBA contract, not a two-way deal. And, Marc Gasol's got $7 million on his deal left. And I'm trying to think of other players that are like relevant. I know Jared Dudley signed a vet minimum, maybe even less, just to come back as a body on the bench. But the Lakers really don't have anybody. I mean, I think they have Wesley Matthews too. So I really don't know how LA is going to go about doing this. I get it. I really do. People are trying to make these super teams team up to try to win these championships. But when you have three players that eat up like 80 to 85% of your whole cap, it's kind of bad. And I'm just looking at this like, what the hell is LA going to do down the stretch if one of them go down? God forbid two, like they happened this year. And then when you get down to the playoffs, LeBron's getting up there in age. Russell's not a young buck anymore. AD's injury prone, like Kyle had mentioned. So I'm thinking at the Lakers down the stretch at the end of the season, how are they going to combat this problem? It's not something you can avoid. It's an 82-game season. So eventually something will catch up. And then Kyle already made the point of Russell's turnover problem. He's had them since Oklahoma City. So I don't really see the whole ball dominant thing falling apart or being an issue because Bron was able to play off the ball whenever Rondo was in the game, and especially when he played with Kyrie. So I think Bron will kind of focus a little bit more now on scoring rather than facilitating, because everybody knows there are times when you look at LeBron James and say, why aren't you being aggressive? And it's because he's being the floor general. He's being the person on the floor that distributes the basketball. Granted, it's nice to have two of them on the floor at the same time, but with both of their egos, who's to say late game shot selection might be a little bit of an issue. So that is, yet to be seen. Obviously, the head coaching of Frank Vogel will probably be on the hot seat to start the season, because you're going to have the hothead in Russell Westbrook, the king in LeBron James, and the injury-prone superstar that is Anthony Davis. So it's going to be an interesting season for the Lakers. It's just, I don't think this makes them better. I think this definitely does make them worse. People are already saying on Twitter, in Kyle's group chats and in my group chats, now the Nets and the Lakers are pretty much the exact same. I don't see them not meeting within the finals next season if they're all healthy. So could it happen? Possibly. Will it happen? I don't believe so. I don't think they can overcome it. I mean, we all saw what happened in the semifinals with Brooklyn and Milwaukee. KD had to play 53 minutes. Harden had to play 53 minutes. If Kyrie was there, he would have probably had to play 53 minutes. Like, is it really going to make a difference at the end of the day? Unless you have some depth, probably not. But, I mean, we'll see what happens, man.